Well, hey, we've got a guest joining.
Uh-oh.
Oh, is he showing up?
Oh my God, are we gonna hear if he makes his wife cry?
Is he married?
I don't know.
Find
I
out.
heard
We'll get the
Brian,
whole
you said he's
story.
married, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You said he went and
So I
got
was just married with kids. Great
I know
family.
Brian's married.
Well, listen, look at Brian.
We'll let Sa Jin give him his bio, but yeah, he's married.
Well, we'll let you introduce him because it's been a long time since I've seen him and talked to him. Close to 20 years.
Hey, who's that? What's a TV show, Tony, with the guy with the grizzly bear, with the long hair and then the
Grizzly Adams.
Grizzly Adams.
Okay, yeah. Brian now started to look like Grizzly Adams too, and not so much Manson from this angle.
Yeah, no, he could look like Jesus. Keep it going.
Hey.
Oh my God, he's all grown up. Look at him.
I gotta put my glasses on so I can see him.
Is your screen frozen, Sa Jin, or is that an image you have? There we go.
Hello, Sa Jin. How are you?
Hey, I am so sorry.
Hey, man.
Please.
Showing up late to the party.
No, you're good. What's happening?
Oh my goodness, the whole crew is here.
Oh yeah, for you, yeah.
Yeah, we joined specially just to catch up with you, man. So
right on.
And
look at you, Brian. Got gray around your beard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but for what I make up for it with my hair. That's what I try to do.
Brian, do you dye that ever or no?
No, I don't. Although I did go to, I'll say this real quick before we go to our guest. There's just in the South Side where a lot of the Muslims live and the Middle Easterners. And I went to they're the best when it comes to hooking up the beer. They can line it up. I mean, they're all very hairy people, so they are just like phenomenal. And the one guy, when I went to this chair, he looked into me. He's like, "Do you want color?" And I said, "No, I'm good." So but he could have hooked it up.
Going natural. I like it.
Yeah, for sure. So we've got Sa Jin Kwok today, and I've known this gentleman since 1998, the same year I met Tony Cecchine. So half of my life, actually, going back to quite a ways. And we first met at a seminar, I believe. It was in Iowa when Tony was out there giving a seminar, and he and I kept in touch.
Fury.
Yeah, we don't say that name a lot on this podcast, but yeah, he was also at the seminar.
Doug Blueball was there as well.
Okay, yeah, Tony can talk more on that.
Gold medalist, 1960.
For sure. Yep. And we've kept in touch over the years, and he's a pretty interesting fellow and has been a globetrotter and competed internationally MMA. So, Sa Jin, why don't you just tell us kind of about yourself and just give us the thumbnail.
Goodness. I was a wrestler in high school. Northeast Ohio is where I come from. When I started getting serious about wrestling when I was about 12 years old, I decided that it was do or die. And by the time I was 18, I was gonna be done. I was either gonna accomplish what I set out to accomplish, or I wasn't. I just knew too many people who got distracted and were like, next year I'll get serious, and they just never amounted to anything. So I said, by the time I'm 18, I'm done. And that really motivated me to work my ass off. And at the time I was under the delusion that I lived in a meritocratic world, where if you just work hard enough, you'll achieve your goals, and that's all it took. You just had to work harder than the next guy. And so that was my training philosophy, was to work harder than everyone else. And you know, I became a competent wrestler. My highest place in state was 4th. And, you know, that was the end of my career. I went to college, was going to become very serious about studying. And, yeah, I went to Grinnell College, and, you know, I just, I couldn't stop training. I was training twice a day. I was still dieting. You know, I just couldn't like get it out of my system. And, you know, I looked for some sort of direction to channel my, you know, athletic abilities. Ended up meeting some guys from the Meskwaki Indian settlement who were training. Giant guy named Andre Roberts, and, you know, his brother Tyrone Roberts, and this other dude, Travis Fulton. And so they were all training at the reservation. They invited me to come there and train with them. And that's how I got my start in MMA. And, you know, at that time, it was very much like, it was the Wild West, you know, no one knew what was going on. No one, you know, it was very much style versus style, see which style is the best. And, you know, at the time, like, you know, I remember my first fight in 1997, you know, there were like legit fears, like, can someone die in here? And, you know, gosh, you know, my very first fight, actually, I think he was maybe, I was like 4th or 5th fight on the card, but a couple fights before me was Shoney Carter. You know, he was fighting against this guy named Laverne Clark. And yeah, Laverne Clark, he knocked him out like in 10 seconds or something like that. You know, I see Shoney coming to the back, you know, breathing heavy, sweating, bloody. I'm just like, oh, Jesus Christ, what am I getting into? But anyways, that was my start to MMA. And eventually, you know, I was just looking for some sort of guidance. Jiu-jitsu just wasn't really, you know, it just really wasn't a good fit for me. And, you know, I ended up gravitating, of course, to Tony, and meeting him at a seminar in Iowa. And then, you know, becoming a correspondence student of sorts. You know, I'd pop in there just whenever I get time, train in Chicago at the old tool and die shop. Yeah. And, you know, get back to Iowa and train with the guys there. And, yeah. And, but, you know, once I kind of had a little bit more knowledge and experience under my belt, I just felt like, you know, what I learned at the tool and die shop during my time training with Tony really provided the foundation of, like, you know, who I was and my identity as a mixed martial artist.
Sweet. I just wish,
yeah. And
like,
so from there I went to, oh, go ahead. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I wish we had more time back then, you know, or even now to train, you know. You're one of the good ones.
Do you still work out?
I do, but, you know, I'm a young dad. Well, I'm an old dad. I'm an old ass dad, but like my kids are young. And so, you know, that's, that just eats up so much of my time, you know, and with the pandemic, you know, I do half-ass workouts to stay in half-ass shape.
Oh, listen,
life gets in the way. I tell so many people this that are interested in training, you know, that life gets in the way for a lot of people. It's just part of it. You know, it's part of it.
Sure. You know, and kind of looking back on my career and, you know, some of the choices I made, I went to Korea, actually, you know, at a time when there was no MMA scene there. And I eventually became part of the, I guess, the beginning MMA scene there in Korea. But I could have, you know, I guess, you know, if I wanted to devote all of my time towards mixed martial arts, you know, I would have done much better staying in the United States. After I left Iowa, I went to train in Hawaii at Grappling Unlimited, Egan Inoue, Barrett Yoshida, Andy Wong, just, you know, a lot of really good guys out there. So yeah, I mean, there were lots of opportunities for me to grow as a mixed martial artist, but you know, life did get in the way. You know, I had some family in Korea that I wanted to reconnect with. Actually, when I linked up with you guys, I had just learned that I had a sister in Korea. You know, I spent about 20 some years of my life not knowing that I had a sister in Korea. And so, yeah, once I found out about that, I felt like I had to go back and spend some time over there.
Nice.
I think it's like a cool thing, and it's something that you don't really appreciate. I mean, I don't think I did anyway when we were younger, right? Like, you're so focused on this thing that you want to be good at, you want to do, and then whatever you think that's you. And then, but later you start realizing, wow, there's more to life than any particular one thing. Maybe like after you have kids, right? That become your one thing. But life, listen, I think overall life, it's, you know, should be a healthy life. You should dabble in a whole bunch of different stuff and then learn a whole bunch of different things. But it's hard work, right? That laid the foundation for everything else, you know, to me. So I think that's cool, but it's something that you know, oftentimes you don't really reflect on that until you've had some experience and you look back.
Now you said you're from, I'm from Cleveland. So where in Northeast Ohio were you from?
I wrestled out of, like, my school was Crestwood, is in Manaway, Ohio. So I guess the largest urban area near there would be like either Streetsboro or Kent, Ohio, Kent State University.
Yeah, you were quite a ways from Cleveland, but yeah, it's. I've been to Kent State once.
Okay.
That's a tough state. That's a tough wrestling state to, especially like placing fourth. Just to place in the Ohio State tournament, it's tough.
Well, we have the best high school team, generally speaking, St. Ed's, yes. Lakewood, Ohio, Cleveland. They win best in the country almost every year. They're really good.
Yeah, these days, I think St. Ed's has been eclipsed by Blair Academy out of Pennsylvania. But actually, I was when I was competing was like this sort of really unique time when St. Ed's was eclipsed by Walsh Jesuit Academy, and so they had a.
Wow. What year are you talking about? Because that was after me.
1994. So I don't know if you remember this guy Mark Malika. He was a red shirt. Yeah, Arizona State. He was a red shirt. I want to say national champion.
Yep.
I want to say that he beat Kurt Angle. Am I remembering that incorrectly? I might be remembering that.
But he did win, and then I remember like the rough time frame when I used to go to my buddy's house and sit on his mom's bed because that's where the cable box was and watch the NCAA finals on ESPN.
But yeah, so there were a few years when Walsh Jesuit had they were like the number one in the nation, and so that was my heyday.
Cool. Yeah, and Blair was Ellen Freed from Blair?
Ellen Freed was from St. Ed's.
St. Ed's. St. Ed's I meant, right.
Yeah, and so he was a few years ahead of me. So, I would see him at times at the open mat at Solon. So Solon had this open mat, which was kind of legendary. So all the guys would converge there during the summer. It was just like a hotbed of like training and up and coming talent. And Alan Freed was a scary guy.
Freed was a big deal, especially like a four-time junior national winner back then. And then when he was in college, he pinned he pinned Tom Brandt one year.
Oh wow, okay.
In like 15 seconds. Boom, threw Brandt right to his back and pinned him. And then Brandt beat him in the NCAA finals that year as a revenge.
And then you're familiar with his brief stint in mixed martial arts, right?
I didn't. Now that you mention it, yes, but I don't really remember. I was just the Ellen Freed fan, like in wrestling.
Yeah, so he had one fight and only one fight. Mark Coleman got him a fight in Japan.
Oh, nice.
Against this, kind of skinny, lightweight, who definitely was not like national champion caliber. This guy named Sato Rumina.
Oh yeah, well, we know him.
And so Rumina Sato, he armbarred Alan Freed. And that was kind of the end of his career, but Alan Freed ended up going back to Cleveland, getting into a bar fight, and hitting this guy, knocking him out. And I guess the guy fell, hit his head on the concrete, like on a curb or something, and died.
Oh, wow.
Oh boy. Yeah, that happens.
And so he spent some time in prison because they tried to use his status as this mixed martial artist to say that he was, kind of a trained killer.
Oh yeah.
And I remember there was just like a lot of heightened drama about that, because at that time there was a lot of hysteria about MMA. There was John McCain was trying to ban it, human cockfighting, and so Alan Freed was kind of caught in that wave of negative publicity that happened at that time.
Yeah, and to harken back, it wasn't even called MMA. Bear this in mind, everyone. It was, NHB, No Holds Barred was a big thing.
Oh yeah. You forget. No holds barred.
That was kind of
That's
the
right.
biggest thing. Shoot fighting was the actual legal term in the state of Iowa because they had like a sanctioning body behind it, but they called it shoot fighting. So it really depended on where you were. And it was sometimes it'd be just like extreme fighting, they would call it or whatever, but it was never under a banner of an actual sport name.
But well, listen, how about that event extreme fighting, right? That was like the
there were two extreme fightings. There was the Battlecade extreme fighting, which was like the big event with Mario Sperry, Igor Zanoniev. I can't remember. Oh, Ralph Gracie, John Lewis, Eric Paulson, and Matt Hume were fighting under that
even I think Kevin
promotion.
Like Kevin Jackson, maybe like
Monday fought there too.
Kenny Monday fought in extreme fighting. Yeah,
I saw that one in Des Moines. That was a pretty good. It was pretty good.
I cornered Munson in one of those in Quad Cities when he first started doing that crap.
Who were you cornering?
Jeff Munson.
Oh, I was there for that fight. I was there for that fight. It was headlined by Dave Monet versus Shoney Carter.
Yeah, and I don't remember much of it. It's kind of a while ago, but it was wild being there.
It was outdoors. Yeah, I remember because I think if you fought to the time limit, it was automatically ruled a draw. But I remember, I feel like Monet really put a beating on Shoney. And
yeah, I was there. I remember it. It was July in Iowa, outdoors.
Quad
so
City.
Humid. Yeah. So it was basically like the mat was completely wet, slipping around. I mean, it was the Dave and Shoney's fight. I think Shoney was the title holder. And so he was defending his title. And it was a all-out brawl, and they ended up carrying Shoney out, I think, on a stretcher, but they like laid the belt on top of him as he was leaving because he was the champion. It went to a draw, but it was a battle. It was a battle. And so I can't say that he lost or won. It was
that place where Shoney used to work out at?
Oh, it's Combat Dough.
Yeah, and then you see him, he'd be working there, he'd be like, hold on a second, and he'd work for a little while, blah, 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 clean up some shit, and jump back in the ring and work out, be like, hold on a second, somebody needs something, and Shoney's got to go get him some stuff, and then come back. Oh.
Yeah, he would do that, something similar to that when he would come to the tool and die shop, you know, he'd be, okay, let me just stretch a little bit, something like that, you know, then get back on there. Same one when I was training him at Triton. He's a good guy. He was on the show here.
He's a friend of the group for sure.
Oh yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah,
I met him in Japan when I was fighting over there.
Huh?
I met Shoney in Japan when I was fighting there. So I was fighting. We were both on the same card for Pancras. I don't even remember who I was fighting. I just remember, you know, Shoney. He's just like a really loud character, you know, with these outlandish zoot suits, and so he just takes up a lot of space.
But you know, he's really not like that. You know, he's a humble guy, really, and that's like a persona for him. You know, he's really a nice guy.
So quiet, really, a little.
Yeah,
bit.
he really
soft
is
spoken. But he will wear that that thing that he wears. He will wear that to work out. Just that little big cop piece, and he just like stuff's like, come on, let's go. I'd be like, dude, you don't need to do that.
Mr. International, man.
Just out of curiosity, what is your assessment of Shoney? Was Shoney someone who underperformed or overperformed in terms of like his talent and what he did in the ring?
Absolutely, I could say that was he underperformed. Well, Shoney said it best to me once, because I used to tell him, I said, Shoney, if you would just train harder, I could show you all this, you know, da da da. He's like, I don't need it. I'm able to win, you know, just basically with what I'm doing now. You know, the level of effort that he was putting out. And for the most part, he was telling the truth. So yeah, I don't think the world ever got to see Shoney as good as he could have been. I think he had more ability than you got to see.
He was back those days. You need like 2 jobs just to,
yeah,
you know,
I mean,
he couldn't do that. Like, yeah, he couldn't make a living doing that, really, even as many things as he was winning.
No, but he's done a lot of stuff. He was doing that Sanchow. He was doing the, you know, amateur wrestling. He did judo. He did kickboxing, the MMA stuff. You know, he's probably got more fights. I would say he's got more fights than anybody that I know personally. You know,
proven warrior, absolutely.
Yeah, but no, he could have been. But you know, I don't want to talk about anything, but he kind of got jobbed in the UFC, man. Things just, he should have gotten promoted. He won, and next thing you know, the next show he's not on it. All right, and the show after that he's not on it. Like Bruce said, the guy had to work, man. He had to make some money somehow. It was tough. It's not like it is today.
No, it's different.
I feel like Shoney had a lot of mileage out of him, especially towards the end of his career. And that was one thing I saw toward the end of my career was guys that were just really beat up and maybe should have hung it up a while ago. How's Shoney doing physically? We saw him on the show here about a year and a half ago. I haven't seen him because I haven't been able to get out. But yeah, we're all beat up. It catches up to you, but he's still active. I know that he was doing something a couple of years ago with my friend and martial artist Terry Dow out on the East Coast, because they called me and I was talking to him on the phone together. So I would think if somebody threw some cash at him, he'd fight again. I don't think he's officially retired, is he, Joe? Joe, you would know.
Well, as far as I know, yeah, I don't think he's ever retiring, but I don't know when the last time he's fought. When we talked to him, it was right in the middle of COVID, so he was definitely in lockdown. But yeah, he was quite a character. He'd randomly just text me when he was on the bus going somewhere. He just was always.
The thing is, the whole nowadays, MMA, it's different. There's a lot of things that are unspoken that are going on in it, and I think you can read between the lines. So, yeah, there's a lot of guys that are full of energy. They can keep on going and going and going. So, it makes it for a different environment.
Sa Jin, let's maybe go back. So, once you were in Korea, you came back. You've seen it progress through the years because you trained also at Greg Nelson's gym up until the 2010s probably. You were fairly active and even competing a little. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I left Minnesota in 2010. So yeah, my last fight was in 2008, but I was training there until 2010. So yeah, I got to see the sport change, evolve and develop. Yeah. I mean, it was, we had come a long ways since, the NHB days. Yeah. Anything specific that you're interested in hearing about, Brian?
I want to know, out of all the places you've been, what place, was like the most fun? What was the toughest? Like, which place stood out and why?
I mean, different challenges in different places. I went to Hawaii and they had like a really great training room. It was actually kind of surreal because, I went there and I didn't know, it was a time when the sport was growing. I didn't know who this guy Barrett Yoshida was. He was like a local legend, so I get on the mat with him and then everyone like starts gathering around to watch, right? I'm just like, what the hell is going on? And eventually, he gets my back, and everyone's like, that's it. He's done. It's over, brother, and, yeah. And so, and eventually I was able to work my way out and, that against Barrett was, considered a victory. Just kind of one of those guys who has like just an incredibly bendy and mobile guard. You just never like get him on the ground or like hold him still. But was, he was one of those guys that I rolled with that I could never tap. Like I could just never tap him. I mean, I would get close. I would crank on something until like I heard crunching and let go. This is a guy. This is too much for me.
He was very active on the bottom, right? He could control you. He worked to control you from wherever he was. It sounded like
he was awesome. He was awesome. He was like a big influence on me. He was a super interesting guy. I'm worried that I'm revealing maybe a little bit too much. He had he like the way he learned was differently. He was different. He had something. It was kind of like dyslexia, but it was spatial dyslexia.
Oh, wow.
And so he So he could, if you want to get to point C, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he already knows how to get to point B, which is in between A and C.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't learn that, oh, just go straight from point B and eventually you'll get to point C. Like he had to learn every set of directions new from the beginning. And that include movements. So like, you know, if you're going from one move to the next move, he couldn't just learn like, oh, well, if they do this, then do that. He would have to start all the way at the beginning.
Right. I know what you mean. Wow, that's not easy, like at all. That's fucking hard.
And so he, you know, also he was just really like, he was kind of, you know, maybe it was because of like the way he learned differently. He had to just really like focus on everything and think about it and think things through and think about it again and again. And, you know, actually when I kind of hung up the gloves, you know, I was at a point where I was like, you know, I'm not doing enough. Like I go and I train hard twice a day. You know, but the guys that like were really doing well. So just to kind of name drop 2 guys, Jacob Volkman, Nick Lentz, and they're at the academy with me. And those guys, all they would do is just think of ways to like get the better of one another, right? They would leave the gym like pissed off, throwing things and upset, you know, because, you know, one of them got, you know, like Volkman caught Lentz in something. And so Lentz would just ruminate the whole time until he came back the next day with like something else. And it was just like constant escalation. And so unless you were like putting it in the time 24 hours, you just were not going to be able to compete. And so that was something that I saw early from Barrett. Moving on from Hawaii, I spent some time in Japan training with Enson Inoue, who's just a nut. He's crazy. You know, actually, just some of the things he did kind of reminds me of maybe some of stories, maybe some of Tony's stories about training with Rodvan.
Yeah.
Tony, I remember you sharing a story with me, and excuse me if this is maybe a little bit too personal, but maybe you want to share it, about when you were in high school. You had mentioned that, you know, you had some success as a boxer. You know, you learned how to wrestle, you're getting a little confident, you're feeling really good about yourself. And, you know, you were trying to thank Rodvan about, you know, like, hey, you know, thanks for like showing me this. I feel like I can handle myself. You know, I'm finally a wrestler. Am I remembering the story correctly, Tony?
Yeah, pretty much. That's it. You know, almost verbatim. You know, I was trying to be the guy was different. You know, he was wound different. You know, I was trying to be nice. And, you know, he grabbed it, took me, got me, and popped my elbow. And he said, "Now you are a wrestler." Okay, with his big, thick Polish accent. Yeah, popped my arm, man. Yeah, and just that's the only time that he intentionally hurt me or injured me, right? And it was a crossroads. You know, I had to think, because it took a while for that to heal. Then I'm like, I don't need to go back to this bullshit. I didn't do anything to the guy. I was trying to be nice. But then, you know, I thought it over and, you know, things. Yep. But you do remember that. That's a classic.
Tony, had you ever been hurt before or anything like really pop before that? Or was that like the first good pop?
Like injury? No.
Yeah.
Well, okay, let me explain. Yes and no. Yes, that was the first like injury. But when I was like 16, it had nothing to do with him. My back went out, I was 16. My back went out for the first time. Okay. That wasn't necessarily a back, you know, broken vertebrae. It just went out. And that's when I first realized, you know, that I had a lifetime of back problems. But no, that was the first injury from him, training injury. Now, getting jumped, getting stabbed, all that shit, that's a whole different story. You know, so I've been injured and hurt many times before that. But yeah, he was scared.
You sure it wasn't the first time that you were with a fat girl? Sorry, I know that's wrong and everything, but I just had to.
Yeah, go ahead. But
Bruce is a body shamer. He's a body shamer.
I know. I'm so sorry because I'm
about Egan.
It's really
I'm the worst kind of fat person. I'm like a fat person shaming other fat people. I'm a fattest.
Yeah.
But you know, when I was training with Enson in Japan, you know, when he first got me in the gym, he threw the gloves in front of me, It's like we're sparring, you know, and Enson, he was about 200 pounds. I was about like $150, you know, so we put on the gloves, and right away he got me on the ground, mounted me, and just started beating the fucking piss out of me. Just wouldn't stop. Nose is bleeding, just blood all over. Actually knocked me out. Woke up to him punching me still. And that must have happened in like a few cycles. And, you know, eventually, like, there's just a bloody mess, like everywhere, you know, blood on the walls, blood on the floor. Just, you know, I couldn't even tell like what was bleeding or what wasn't bleeding, you know. And he's like, get up. He's like, go into the bathroom, get a towel. He's like, go clean that up. You know, and so like, you know, I'm just kind of stumbling my way to the bathroom, you know, wiping up blood while I'm bleeding, you know, I'm kind of disoriented. You know, and later on he pulled me aside. He's like, you know, he's like, if you didn't keep fighting, like I would have, he's like, I would have never trained you. He's like, but you know, you kept fighting. It's like, it's a good job. And then he gave me like some pointers on like mount escapes. Like, you know, I was mounted on you, and you know, you didn't block my leg at all. You just tried to like block the arm. You block the leg. So anyways, that guy was just, he was very crazy. Just, you know, maybe kind of old school like that. So anyways, that was another place that I trained that was tough.
That's a good story.
So yeah, I mean, I'm sorry?
That's a great story, but you know, like you do that nowadays, right? People like different times.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, for sure. Although Enson, he was born in Hawaii, so he's Japanese American, but he was just a very interesting character. Just, you know, maybe had a few screws loose. Him and this guy Nori were just Norifumi Yamamoto were just very unhinged and just kind of had their own thing going on. It was Purebred Omiya was the name of their gym.
Listen, earlier you said something, and I was going to ask you this. Like you were saying, oh, that they were nuts. Have you ever met a normal wrestler after high school, like at any gym, that anybody that was semi-normal? I don't think I have. Like normal in the sense like they're like ordinary. Everyone I've met that, whether they're good or not, if they end up somewhere and then work out, they're like extraordinary in some way. Or nuts.
For sure. Although, to be honest with you, Bruce, I think there's like a very short list of you know, the really elite wrestlers that I actually liked. You know, usually those guys just really rub me the wrong way.
Jerky.
You know, you guys probably have met more of them than I have, but in the boxing world, most of the boxers, I'll say most of them have been awesome. You know, except I knew a couple after their career, they got in trouble, mainly with drugs, you know, and they became different, but because of the drug use probably. And they're gone now. They were younger. Well, they were right around my age, but they've been passed away for quite a few years.
Well, but like even just the fact that you have to like the grind, you have to enjoy the pain, you have to like the process, you got to get through that. None of that is like in the realm of like normalcy, you know, like that big part of it. And then that in turn makes people like do maybe not crazier things, but just more loose and not so be attached to like, excuse me, societal norms. Like wailing on you as an initiation, want to see how you're going to react and if you're going to stick it out. That's super old school. Like I hear that, I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I wish somebody would beat the fuck out of me. Right?
Yeah, remember how
and then tell me I'm worthy afterwards, right? Because I know I'll keep fighting.
Our training was rough, and then it just got to the point where people were complaining about it all the time on the internet. They would never put up with this story about Egan Inoue. You know, so I just kind of like, well, even now, Sa Jin, we were talking about certain guys that we train. We can't even do the rips. They just won't do it. They're like, nope, you're not gonna rough me up like that. I'm not gonna feel that pain. So it's frustrating for me because, you know, for example, it's like, let's say you're a spicy chef cook, and that's what your specialty is, spicy food, and then they tell you, don't make it hot. I don't want any spices on it. You know, well, you're missing the best part.
That's a good example.
Sure, for sure.
It is. No, and you know, because then, you know, I remember because I took a lot of heat back then from, you know, these people, and in the 90s and early 2000s, and yeah, you got damned if you do, damned if you didn't. You know, Tony's too rough, he's too rough, he's too rough. All right, then I'll go super easy. Oh, his shit don't even hurt, you know, so you couldn't win. But yeah, they wouldn't be able to go through what Egan did or what I went through in my training with Rod Von. There's no way. They just, it's been proven that there was no way they could go through it because they bitched all the time.
Sa Jin, what was your gym in Korea like? Any takeaways on that, or you want to share?
Oh, you know, I actually had a chance to, so we had an MMA gym, which was great. You know, and I can't really, yeah, I mean, I guess what I would probably talk more about is I got to train at the National Sports University. I got to train with the freestyle wrestlers there. Yeah, yeah. And they fucking hated me. Oh God, those guys fucking hated my guts.
Why?
They were pissed. You know, because there's just like a persistent, you know, discrimination towards mixed race Koreans.
You weren't Korean enough.
Yeah, I mean, it was, yeah. I mean, like if I would have kind of played the role of the white guy and like spoken English and like shook hands and, you know, kind of obnoxious, took up a lot of space, they would have, you know, found a workaround for that. But they, you know, just, it's really uncomfortable for South Koreans to be around people like me. There's a lot of history that, you know, that is kind of folded into bodies like mine.
Yep.
You know, that people weren't allowed to speak about it for decades, you know, talk about it, you disappear today. So anyways, yeah, those guys hated my fucking guts. And so I went there. It was just like kind of walking into a hostile room every time. And, you know, people just literally trying to hurt you. And, you know, occasionally we would get people who were like members of the national team. There was an Olympian who came in and was trying his best to drop me on my head. You know, like he was trying to suplex me on like onto my head. He ended up, yeah, he ended up tearing up my knee really good, and you know, I was off my feet for a couple months. But it was,
fuckers.
You know, it was one of those situations where like you either get better and fight back, or you leave. You know, and that's, you know, that's just how so many wrestling rooms are, and you know, I kind of hated it, and I, you know, maybe that's sort of why I feel a little bit of animosity towards yeah, maybe some of the higher level wrestlers that I've encountered. It's just that ultra competitiveness that sort of permeates everything in their lives, and it's just, you know, yeah, this sort of never say die attitude about shit that just does not matter at all, you know,
because they don't listen. When you're younger, this is what I was saying earlier, you don't realize there's more to it, and you're not only defined by this one thing that you're doing at that moment. You should be a more well-rounded person than just that.
What was interesting was I found that with you know, MMA, that people were super humble. You know, people were super humble, and there was no posturing, especially like in the earlier years. You know, just because you would get on the mat, you'd really see who is better. You know, there was no question about it, so there's no need to like pretend.
That gym you were in though, like Volkman and some of those guys, I mean, listen, he's like part of a national champion team that didn't have any national champions. They were all grinders, and the wrestling for Jay Robinson back in those days. And those guys, every one of them were nuts. I can tell you that. They were all a little bit of psychotic in a good, hard ass, crazy way.
Interesting story about Volkman, just to kind of underline that. You know, Brock Lesnar, he was, you know, at our gym as well. And so he had like a whole stable of heavyweights that would train with him. And, you know, they would train with us at times, and they were really big boys. And so, you know, one day, Volkman, he's got this guy, he's like maybe 260 or something on the ground. He's got him in a neck mount, you know, just grinding his knee in this fucking guy's neck. And, you know, one of the guys at the gym just kind of nudges me and says, you know what, Sa Jin? In Volkman's mind, he's every bit as big as that guy he's got on the ground.
Maybe bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah, bigger. No, those guys are all bad.
So I went to a couple of seminars with Coach Nelson, and and obviously we have a connection. I even visited the gym one time, and he told me that Volkan was the strongest person he ever met pound for pound by far, just physically, not just the farm boy strength, right? Not just not in the weight room, but
for sure. And just it was weird because it was like I don't know, it was like, how do I even say? It was like positional, you know what I'm saying? Like you put him in a weight room, he's not going to throw around a lot of weight. Even like, doing like training or conditioning, he's not like superior in that sense, but you get him on the mat, you put him in weird positions. He was just another guy that was impossible to take down. He was one of those guys that like we'd have goes and I'd just be hammering at him as hard as I could, or I'd get him when he's exhausted. I just couldn't take that guy down because he was
he was a 3-time All-American, so that's okay. I think Sa Jin, if he's those wrestling credentials that you could,
and he's a lot bigger.
Yeah.
Well, right? I want to throw in something, and of course I have to apologize because my memory is not what it was. But through Mark Schultz, I met this guy who was living in Wisconsin, humongous wrestler, 300-pound guy. Okay. And, again, I totally forgot his name. Real nice. And he told me that, he was working out with, Doug Bluebaugh at one of Bluebaugh's camps when Doug Bluebaugh was 50 years old, 50. And Doug Bluebaugh, as you know, you met him. He was, not a big guy, he wrestled at middleweight, and as he got older, he was probably 200 pounds, whatever. He said, this big guy, this big wrestler, said it took me 5 minutes to get him down. And he was 50 years old and not in shape. And this guy was an All-American wrestler in college and everything, and much, much younger, probably still in his 20s, late 20s. And that's how good Doug Bluebaugh was, even at 50. That's incredible,
You can find him on the YouTube still, right? Especially his gold medal match. Wasn't he? Did he have a come from behind match where he ended up sticking the guy?
He beat Habibi, who was considered the best wrestler in the world, and he pinned him. But what Doug Bluebaugh told me that the time that I met Sa Jin, he said at the dinner, he said, now I may be wrong with the year. It could be 64 or 1968 because he won the 60 Olympics. But he said he was better, much better of a wrestler in either 64 or 68 than he was when he won the gold. But because of how the Olympic rules were back then, he was disqualified forever wrestling again he must have made money somehow. They were really strict back then. But, he could have won probably more gold medals than what he did. But you missed the story when your camera got disconnected. But this big 300-pound All-American.
Oh, no, I heard. I heard you.
You heard me? Okay, yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that's how good. But when I was with Doug Bluebaugh, that's the time he broke my finger, actually. But he was so excited because I asked him at the dinner, show me your front headlock, because that's what he was known for. I just put it on me, man. I want to feel it. I want to feel your front headlock. The guy was just amazing to me. A wonderful wrestler, and probably would have been like, if our ages were the same, he'd have been like, we would have been together, because he had that nasty wrestling kind of thing, hardcore, and just knew a lot of dirty tricks. And he was just a great guy. Just Doug Bluebaugh was one of the nicest guys I've ever met.
I remember having a lot of fun at that seminar, watching you and Doug Bluebaugh like compare notes and exchange, like, hey, have you ever twisted the wrist like this? And and just kind of back and forth was a lot of fun to watch.
Well, the thing is, that's a guy who you can pick his brain, learn something from. He still wants to know things. Luthez was like that. Want keep on learning, exchanging of ideas. But make no mistake about it, even though Doug came from a strict, amateur background, no, he understood every little concept that I was throwing at him. He got it. I mean, he knew. As a matter of fact, when we were on the parterre position, and he just got so excited because, let's not drop names, but the guy that was showing it wasn't doing it right, and out comes Doug Bluebaugh, just grabs my fingers, like just cranks it in, snap my finger, and I loved it. It was like, awesome, man. This is so cool. Then he puts the, it's like a short arm scissor, but he didn't put the short arm in it. But, it was just one of the moves that he used to like to do. And, it's painful. It would be considered illegal, potentially dangerous, because it's technically a submission. That's just how his mindset was. But he was so excited to see that. I mean, the guy was just so excited. I loved it. Didn't you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was a lot of good energy.
Yeah. And even just to remember the technique, he was talking about how if the guy's pressed down and his elbow's in, you can still get 2 fingers under essentially the knob of the elbow, and you can lever out. If you could just get the 2 fingers in, it didn't matter. He's like, I don't care how strong it is, I don't care what his weight is. So that's just one takeaway. And the technical finesse of understanding that on your opponent.
And
the principles.
Right. And then you got to go and take it. Right. You can't just wait for the guy to give it to you. You grab those fingers and you just start yanking them.
Well, the thing is, how many people in the world, have gone to his wrestling camps through the years, high school aged or whatever, and probably were never, never got into this aspect of it with him. Right. So, this was an occasion that weekend where it was like, show your most ruthless base, your shit. Just let's go for it. Yeah, it was just nice. I wish I could have kept in touch, but you know how life is. Things, I'm in Chicago and he was wherever. Oklahoma, I think he was living.
I always had coaches that used to be like, hey, this is the way to do it legally. This is the way to do it illegally. Don't do it this way. And then, by the way, if you do it this way, you choke the guy out, right?
Yeah.
And then sometimes before the ref catches it, you could get the 2 and then you turn him over. It's over. Like
boxing too.
I've heard all that, right? And then come on, checking the oil. Like their coaches would be like, come on, you just stick it fucking in there, dude. Get 2 in there. Other people would be teaching like, hey, just scoop scoop. I had coaches would be like, just fucking stick it in there. They will freeze, and then
Bruce, that was your specialty move. I mean, these guys that are bitching about ripping now, they ain't seen nothing yet, man, when it came to the Bruce Lee butt drag.
Well, the thing, Lou Thez was all about showing our, not techniques so much, but like setups and little variations, because Lou wasn't the type of guy that knew a million submission holds. You don't need that, right? But it was, and he would show me like, oh, Ed Strangler Lewis would do a ride like this. Ray Steele, this is how he would do a toe hold, a special way. And then he would tell me these great stories of violence. I mean, on how Ray Steele took out a national champ. I'll think of his name. He came to the gym looking for some heat, and he got it. He got his ankle snapped. And the name will come to me. But yeah, these are just great, just great to hear how, because Lou was back in the day where, the guys before him, they were the last of the real shooters, man. The guys that really knew the hooking. Not all of them did, but some did. And Lou was in those circles. He was in the right place at the right time. Luckily, like me with Rodvan. So, Rodvan was from those guys' era, because Rodvan was older than Lou. Boy, I can't think of this guy's name right now, but he actually, that got snuffed. He also might have done American Judo too. I think Bernie something. My memory is very bad.
Pedro. No, it's not.
No, it was Bernard
Hey, while you're thinking of that, let me ask Sa Jin a question. So, what's your favorite move, favorite submission, and then how do you like to set it up? What's your go-to? Or what's the one that you get?
The one thing that I get all the time, I don't know. It depends. It just really depends. I mean, I get, because I never really try to force anything. One move that I feel like I've spent a lot of time refining is my top wrist lock, my double wrist lock. Either down below or up top. What else? I've worked a lot on north-south choke as well. That's just a position that I tend to naturally get in. I become a decent guard passer, and so I tend to just kind of keep rotating. I like to do a lot of head control, especially against there's a lot of guys, they play the guard, they're real kind of squiggly and wormy, and so I just kind of clamp down on the head to sort of slow down their movement, pass, and then naturally that seems to sort of transition in north-south position. So those are my strong points. Leg locks have always been something that I've relied on. Although, there's a whole new like leg lock meta, with Danaher and his whole hit squad, and so that's an area where I need to catch up.
So you sound like a solid old man at this point. Nothing too flashy, fancy. Just get what you can where you can, and then whatever is given you, right? You just grab it and work your way there.
Catch as catch can.
Yeah.
How about the rest of you?
I haven't
go-to move or submission.
I'm a ping pong player now. I don't even have my gear here, but I mean my mom's. But I told my ping pong story not too long ago over COVID, where I was trying to, I stay active throughout the years, but because of work and all that, I just being away from the mat, I would do various workouts to stay in shape, and I figured I'd go back to playing some garage ping pong, but except for real. Long story short, I was getting my ass kicked by everybody, like 7-year-old boys, girls, all the way up to like 70, 80-year-old, everyone. Just, it doesn't matter. Grandma, grandpas, whatever. So now that's the thing I'm trying to get better at. I had to go seek help. I had to get coaches. I had to eat right, exercise, maybe pray a little bit.
Do you take any consolation knowing that you could hook any one of those people when you wanted to?
It's okay. So if I'm in front of somebody and I'm like, yeah, I could beat them up and blah, blah, blah. But when I'm telling you, when that ball's coming at me and then they look like they're going to take a big swing, I get a little nervous. I'm like, ah! And it hits my finger. I'm like, oh, that really hurt. But yeah, I look at him. I'm like, man, I just want to beat you with your own crutches, but I can't even beat you in ping pong.
How about the rest of you?
Probably the biggest takedown that I always absorbed from Bruce was the front headlock, the snap down. So I got to be decent with that, especially as person over 6 foot, being able to use that into a kind of a dominant position. And then I was always a top wrist locker, so I would say stuck with that even through time. It's still there even when I try to put it on. But I'm not all that active now, especially post COVID.
The last time we got on the mat, Brian, you got me with a top wrist lock.
Right. That's true. You did tap me out. Don't say it's not like I dominated you the whole time. I did get you with a top wrist lock though at some point.
Locks and leg locks for me. I like.
Okay.
I like cranks and neck chokes, but top wrist locks and leg locks. But getting on Piggy and backing on Bruce earlier, it really is the simple stuff that's always going to be there. The newfangled stuff, they may be nice, it may be good, but you can always defeat it by the shortest route. Go straight to it. The joints can only go in so many ways, so that's the thing. And Lou once said, as you get older, because I always wrestled fast, and Lou was like, you'll learn to slow down, be a little more defensive. Well, I don't know if I ever will, because I'm just like I'm just hyper kind of guy. But I'm like you, Sa Jin, I don't want to just say what I want to do because, you know, maybe with a guy built a certain way, I always go for the easiest thing, you know, so it could be a neck on one guy or an ankle on another guy or an arm bar on another guy. It'll be something though. So it's just up to, you know, you to decipher what it is that you think you can get. They didn't get it.
I said, I'm going to stick these two in your ass. I told them ahead of time, this is what I'm going for. In whatever position we're in, this is what I'm going to be going for. And then I surprise them. And then I go with the left hand.
You got the switcheroo, man.
Yeah, I threaten with the right, and then I go with the left.
That's a shell game. Nutshell game. That's another story.
I'm telling you, like, you get a little older, you're like, you know what? If that's going to make life a little easier, so be it.
I got a question for Sa Jin. So you did touch on, like, you know, the leg lock craze, and it gets very intricate with multiple appendages attacking one in, you know, this, you know, in grappling competition settings. Do you have an opinion about that approach or what you're seeing with grappling competitions and how applicable it is to like MMA? Because some of what they do, I just think you're asking for an ass whipping if it's like you're trying to do this and somebody's going to punch you. But that's just me. And granted, it's a different rule set, but
I mean, you know, there's just so much, I want to say, meta these days in terms of the ground game. You know, one thing that I was telling you, Brian, and you know, I just like to mention here, since it's, you know, we're on a, you know, Tony's podcast, is that we are in a post catch wrestling world. You know, there was a lot of guys who talked shit about Tony's videos, who also religiously watched them and like folded in those techniques into their own games. You know, these days I feel like jiu-jitsu has taken like type of approach, and so I feel like, you know, jiu-jitsu in and of itself, there's just so many varieties. You know, you have top players, you have bottom players, you have half guard players, you got people who are like, you know, deep half guard players. You know, and I feel like a lot of times people can get lost in the intricacies of like a certain series of techniques. And so, yeah, I would agree. Then, you know, a lot of times, you know, you see those guys trying fancy shit and, you know, just getting bludgeoned by, you know, some pretty unpolished guys who just have heavy hands on the ground. At the same time, like, you know, there are people who can make it work. So I think it just kind of depends on who it is. And then also, you know, you just got to, I don't know. I feel like you just can't try to force something to happen. You know, you go in a fight, you're like, okay, I'm gonna leg lock this guy. Like, you know, I think you're looking for trouble. But if you kind of, yeah, if it presents itself in a fight and you take it, then, you know, more power to you. In terms of, I guess, grapplers that I'm seeing in MMA, you know, people like Gary Tonin. Am I butchering his name? Tonin,
I believe.
Anyways,
yeah.
And Ryan Hall are two guys that, you know, I feel are like very much top-notch grapplers who bring a lot of that meta to MMA. I've seen a lot of guys not use it successfully either. For myself, I mean, you know, gosh, it's been such a long time that I've been on the mat, like with a set of gloves, punching people, that I don't know if I really could speak on it like in an informed way. You know, I tore my retina in 2009, and yeah, I lost my eyesight for a little bit, and that was really scary. I thought my right eye was gone. Like I was like, wow, this is it. And so yeah, so I haven't, you know, so I tapered down my contact until I left in 2010, and then after that, I was like, you know what, I've got other things I can do with my life. This isn't something that I, you know, have to rely on. And it's not like the only thing I know or the only like skill I have that I can parlay into a career. And so from there, I kind of transitioned out of, you know, I guess live sparring. And speaking of injuries, I'm just wondering how all of you are holding up these days. What kind of injuries are you struggling with? Tony, I know that you have struggled for the longest time with back injuries, back problems.
Breathing.
How's your health these days?
Mine's not good with me, you know, so mainly my arms, but my brain injuries, you know, you know, I've suffered a lot of concussions, and I was warned 20 some years ago. Well, I had an aneurysm in '93, so that's coming up on 30 years. But about 20 years ago, like around 2002, I got a secondary diagnosis, and then basically what the one doctor ended up saying is that one of these days it's going to start, your memory loss is going to probably become like a floodgate. All right, you might see some subtle stuff, but then when it hits, it's going to probably hit full blast. So it's there, you know. I'm in that now. I'm in that severe memory loss thing where I struggle with both short-term and long-term memory. So that's like a big thing. And then plus, you know, taking care of my mother who's got Alzheimer's full time, and the stress of that, and I have no help, you know, it's just basically, I'm an only child. She's an only child. So that was the catalyst more than likely that probably put it over the edge. So that's the biggest thing that I'm concerned with for me.
You're making this very hard for me to make fun of you. I had like a lot of good jokes I was going to fire away.
Well, go ahead. I won't remember them tomorrow.
You had like when you had problems that, when you realize stuff, I was gonna say, yeah, the doctor told him herpes forever. I had like all kinds of shit lined up, and then he goes like down like a whole thing where I'm just like, okay.
It's okay. Go for it. I won't remember tomorrow. It's fine.
True.
Tony, how do you have any other secondary type of issues like coordination? Is your coordination still okay? Yeah. Balance?
I get balance issues now and then, but you know what happens is, like, we just filmed an instructional video like in December. So you know, once I was going, like once I was focused and on, then I'm on. Then I can roll. You know, I can get her going. But yeah, I get balance issues quite a lot, and confusion. You get mixed up, you know, like you mentioned Barrett and this spatial dyslexia. You know, I'm starting to think that I have something similar to that, because I really get mixed up with my directions. And I don't mean like hang a right, hang a left, but like, you know, like it's hard for me to see things like I used to see things, you know. So like if something's wrapped, like a twist tie, I can't figure out how to undo it. Okay. If I'm taking a bolt off, or I'm trying to tighten it, either way, I've got to think about this. I know the righty tighty, lefty loosey, but if I'm on a different angle, I can't figure it out. I don't know which way is righty tighty, which way is lefty loosey. So I have to actually stop and figure it out, and I get frustrated because I'm consciously knowing that I got to make these adjustments. It's very frustrating. So those are some of the things that I go through. But who cares? Nobody gives two shits. I still got to survive, right? So I figure it out. You know.
Well, I mean, I think
have a plan.
And I think as we get older, you know, we have to develop workarounds, maybe just in regular life and on the mat too. Like we're all like hobbled with injuries and problems and trick knees. And so, you know, we have to find workarounds in a lot of different areas of life.
Well, you know, I wanted to.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Are you done with like all? Listen, you keep going. I'm not gonna be able to make fun of you ever again. So
no, I was able to whip myself in shape for this video that we did in December. I felt I came in light. I had a target weight. So when I made the Lost Art of Hooking in 1999, I weighed 225. When I made the Snap No Tap in 2009, 2008, I actually filmed it. I weighed 225. So I'm always consistent. So I said, well, I'm going to come in under 220 for sure. You know, and I did. I came in like 217 for this video. So, you know, I've been trying to keep my weight down all, you know, as I get older. So yeah, I was able to do that, you know, and I felt I moved well for my age. You know, I was still quick. I felt okay, but I was, I brought a whole bunch of aspirins, and I was popping aspirins to make sure that, you know, my back didn't act up or my knees or something like that. So,
yeah, I
made it through the video.
Joe and I visit Tony, you know, every once in a while to help film some of his internal content. And when he's on, he's on. I mean, he's the same guy I met 25 years ago. So, you know, in those moments, but yeah, the day-to-day is, you know, obviously Tony can speak to. I've been feeling good personally, Sa Jin. I've been doing a lot. I haven't been on the mats for a while, but I've been doing a lot with like mobility training and lifting, even like light Olympic style lifting. And I've got a buddy now who is a yoga instructor, so working on handstand techniques. So
nice.
Feeling so from a physical standpoint, you know, despite having some injuries, I've been able to like have a good chiropractor that I worked with a lot last year to work on.
How long can you hold a handstand for now?
Not very long. I'm just like, basically I just bounce off the wall and
that's good.
Try to keep but that's a brand new thing. That's like a month, less than a month. I've been doing that just once a week with him. So,
that's very
thinking about,
cool.
yeah.
Hey, I will say this. I tell everybody, like, I don't really eat meat anymore, and that has helped with all my joint problems for me personally. All my swollen, all my like normal aches and pains that I used to have, all gone. There's more vegetables, more fruit, and then just eat better, and then just like 4 weeks, it's gone. It was crazy.
Bruce, how much dairy do you get, though?
I want to say something about Sa Jin because, you know, when I met him over 25 years ago, basically, it was 1998, I think, but close enough. You know, not only are you a great humble, you know, humble guy, this and that, but you're a real student of the game, and you were one of the really most talented guys that, you know, I can speak on behalf of the other guys as well, you know, that we've ever run across. You just had that ability, you know, and, you know, I know you're not a name dropper and this and that, but I know you've got on a few of the famous guys, you know, and you held your own and came out victorious. Let's put it that way. I know this, and, you know, you've always been, a guy that I missed. And I know we used to keep in touch on the internet, and then you moved to Korea. As a matter of fact, I just asked Joe today, I didn't know where you were even living. I didn't know if you were still in Korea or not, because we lose touch. But yeah, you were one of the good ones, because back then we had a lot of guys that would come through the gym that, you know, turned out to be nice guys, but did have kind of like an attitude. And, you know, then you kind of got to get through that. Well, you never brought the attitude. We never had to break through that attitude. Like, you know, we never had to do an Egan Inoue on you to get you to be in the right frame of mind. You were just there. And, you know, I wish I had 100 guys like you. My life would have been better on and off the mat, because you're as good as a person as you are on the mat. That's a fact.
Well, you know, Tony, one thing that I wanted to mention, and has always kind of been a little bit of a conflict for me, and I guess maybe not as much these days, you know, I trained under you, and I consider you like my first legit kind of real coach. You know, kind of the imprint that my time at the tool and die shop had on me just sort of carried with me, you know, for the rest of my career. You know, I get on a mat with people and they'd be like, oh, you know, you move differently, or like, you're not a jujitsu guy. And like, people just like pick up on it right away. You know, but I was always reluctant to just be like, I'm a catch wrestling guy, you know, because, you know, there was, as you know, there were a lot of people who are, you know, kind of making false claims about like their training or their lineage. And so I didn't want to like, I just didn't want to like overstep my boundaries, you know. And so, but at the same time, I did want to let people know, like, hey, you know, catch wrestling is what I do. And so yeah, I mean, I've been kind of an informal ambassador kind of internationally for catch wrestling, you know, and it's just been really interesting. You know, those guys who, you know, who I trained with in Japan at Purebred Omiya, they trained under, you know, Tiger Mask, like some of them did. Nobuto Asahi, he was the lightweight judo champion. He's a guy who trained under Tiger Mask. So there was just a lot of interesting, you know, contact or knowledge of catch wrestling when I was in Korea. You know, that was something that people didn't know about either, and so you know, a lot of people were very interested in it. You know, they did a little piece in a magazine, you know, where, you know, I was demonstrating some, you know, catch wrestling techniques that I picked up from you at the tool and die shop. So yeah, you know, I tried to be an ambassador. You know, just lots of guys that I met like all over the world had things to say about you. I don't, have you ever spent time with Erik Paulson?
Physically, no. I've spoken to him on the phone, but no, we've actually never met in person.
Yeah, really interesting guy. He had a lot of great things to say about you. I met him in 1999 in Hawaii, and met him again in 2009 in Minnesota. And he's like, "Oh, I remember you. You're Tony Cecchine's guy from Hawaii." And then wow. He actually, yeah. And 10 years later, he gave me a rundown of our grappling session. He's like, "Yeah, you tried to do a knee bar on me." But anyways, had lots of good things to say about you, as well as, you know, Josh Barnett. Just a lot of, and like, so you're, you know, you've definitely had a real impact on the sport. And I feel like it just has never really been acknowledged like it should have been.
Well, thanks. You know, yeah, it has. I mean, I kind of got pushed under the carpeting or whatever, swept under the rug, I guess would be the thing to say. And, you know, whatever. I mean, what can you do about it? You can't turn back. The thing is, we have the videos out there. They've been out there forever. And my approach, excuse me, has always been more combat oriented, more like, you know, self-defense, or, you know, like hard fighting, you know, that would have, even to this day, many tournaments, my moves or my techniques, my approach are still illegal, you know, even though like Javier has won some world titles, but even still, he's got to modify some of the stuff I showed him for each different organization, which could be, man, that could be, I don't know how we can pull that off. But yeah, I wish things were different. I'm not going to sit here and lie. I wish that the shit would have turned out differently for me, because maybe by now I would have had a better base and I could like relax in my old age, as opposed to now it's worse than it was 20 years ago. But seeing you after all these years, Bruce is on, Joe, Brian, you know, when we filmed the video a month ago, we had a bunch of some of the other guys that, you know, that I used to work with back in the old days. I wanted to make it kind of like a reunion thing. But you know what? You never know what can happen, Sa Jin. Okay. I always call you Mike.
Oh, it's fine. I mean, that's how you met me, right?
Yeah,
I didn't take, you know, I wasn't using my Korean name then, so it's fine. It's totally fine.
Well, we don't know what tomorrow will bring. You know, all it takes is a resurgence. Maybe this video series that I filmed with BJJ Fanatics will be the reigniter. I don't know. I have no input right now. I know that it hasn't reflected in any sales on my website, you know, for any of my current videos. But I just have to play a wait and see attitude. Do I think it's going to make a difference? No, I don't. I think that it would have to take a dedicated campaign by somebody who is an expert, world-class marketer guy that could just get me out there. But I've been saying that for 25 years. I don't know shit about marketing, but no, I appreciate all the nice things that everyone says. Even if I don't hear it, it's nice to know it. But it's nice to have guys like you guys who are there still trying to put out the good word. But now you mentioned Tiger Mask. I'm assuming you're mentioning Sayama, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, you know, just like wrestling has different American or judo, whatever, Brazilian jiu-jitsu schools, the Japanese style of catch wrestling is different than what I do. And it's also blended, because a lot of those guys, now I can't speak for Sayama per se, but I do believe he cross-trained in Sambo and something else, maybe a little bit of judo. I don't remember now. Again, my memory fails me a lot. But yeah, on the ground, they're different. They move different. They submit differently. It's so for people that may be watching or listening to this podcast, you know, not all styles, not all catch wrestling styles are the same. You know, not all gyms are the same. Not all boxing styles are the same. Yeah, it's different. So you showed probably an older style, the hardcore, like hooking, I should say, the hooking style. Whereas they came from a different kind of element.
What I'm just curious, what did you see was the biggest difference in application or in training when you were there with that lineage, Sa Jin?
they weren't wrestlers. I mean, just straight up, they weren't wrestlers. And I mean, I think, yeah, they were like, they're really good submission guys, but they didn't have the type of I don't know, just sort of raw skill set that wrestlers have. You know, especially like when you talk about folk style and a top game and that grinding and that pressure.
The writing,
you know, which, yeah, exactly.
The movement,
just like, so some of those fundamentals just weren't there for them. Yeah, you know, what else would I say about their styles?
It's like you talk about some of those international wrestlers in their transition into MMA sometimes isn't great when they get to the ground because they don't have the folk style training, the control aspect. They go with the high risk exposure, just turn the guy versus how do I stay on top and grind this fucker out?
Well, that was what was really interesting for me at National Sports University in Korea was, you know, interestingly, like those were some of the laziest guys that I've ever met. You know, like the coach would tell them to like do, you know, 20 push-ups, and they would do like 10 and then start looking if the coach is watching. And if he wasn't, they'd be like, okay, I'm done. But, you know, their wrestling was very similar, just lots of like cheap tilts and sort of, you know, oriented towards the points game as opposed to like getting someone down, controlling them, dominating a position. And so, yeah, that whole, you know, even with the freestyle, that was something that I saw missing. And so I would say that's probably a pretty fair comparison is like, you know, if you compare like, yeah, being on the bottom with a folk style wrestler as opposed to having a freestyle guy on top of you.
Right.
That's an analogy that I would make with the Japanese guys that I was training with. And this was a long time ago, so their game has definitely changed, I'm sure.
Folks, how you will focus on escape and getting away or reverse the position and versus just staying put until, you know, the whistle gets
But in defense of the Japanese guys, you know, they all came from their style that they were taught and shown was still like all performance wrestling, you know, performance moves, you know. So when Sa Jin says, you know, they weren't wrestlers, no, it was performance. You could see the hold. People don't want to see the wrestling, you know, in the professional world. You know, they wanted to see the more theatrical thing. And that's the only thing that I can say that I never got in that world of professional wrestling. Like if you had me perform in a professional wrestling environment, like right now, where I had to just completely, you know, work the whole thing, I would look like a fool. I would not know how to do it. Right. So, it's just not their fault. This is what they learned.
But also like historically, like you could literally, if you read history, you could trace back, right? Like American catchers catch can, and that in folk style has like that direct connection. Where this is the only country that wrestles folk style. Everybody else wrestles freestyle and Greco. Here, you take the guy down, you got to control him on top, and if you're on bottom, you got to try to get away. We're really the only country left.
Look how many years that America was the predominant, you know, well, they call it they switched the name to freestyle in the Olympics, but we would win. All the famous catch wrestlers, you know, the professional catch wrestlers were all, you know, American oriented. You know, we have a rich history and we should be proud of that. And that's the one thing about Rodvan when he moved to Cleveland. And he was trained with Gehrig, who was part of the Frank Gotch, Farmer Burns crew in one of their books and everything. And he was a world lightweight or welterweight, one of the smaller weight class champions. You know, and because of Rodvan's already ability and his massive strength, they made him a policeman. They taught him every little trick and submission, you know, in the world because, you know, hey, you're the guy, you know, you'll handle this. You just came out of a concentration camp, so this shit isn't going to be anything compared to what you've been through. That kind of mentality. And even Luthez said he never met him, but he knew of his reputation in the gyms, you know, of Cleveland area. But this is like what I try to tell people. You know, I say the style in Japan, you know, the Carl Gotch, Billy Robinson style is different. It's not what you're going to see here for me. It's a completely different setup, not just the fact that we wrestle more and we do the ripping and all of that, but even the application of the submissions itself are different. Now, Sa Jin, you weren't with me long enough to see all the different ways I do these submissions, but Brian could testify to it, and Bruce, of course, with and just the angles, because, you know, the way I learned, pinning didn't matter, performance didn't matter. You know, I don't have to keep you from reaching the rope, so you let go of the hold. You know, it's all about taking you out right here, right now. And yeah, it's just been an interesting thing. So, but for some people, they may be better suited for that style, the Japanese style, or the, you know, the English style, let's call it, really, because that's really probably what we should call it. Man, maybe that's what's going to work for you. Everyone's different, you know, but I just say, you know, when MMA or when Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was getting popular back in the early 90s, they went over to Japan and they had their way with those quote unquote Japanese catch wrestlers. Okay. They were able to pretty much blow right through them. So that kind of speaks volumes. And I think it boils down to what you said, Mike, that they don't wrestle. Whereas the BJJ guys struggled with good amateur wrestlers and American wrestlers that were kind of a little bit submission savvy, you know, kind of learned how to avoid them. You know, so right there, I think that's kind of like the biggest difference to me, in my eyes, in my opinion.
One thing that I think is really interesting, I don't know if any of you are still following like amateur wrestling. I feel like there's been a lot of interesting cross-pollination in terms of techniques from MMA into amateur wrestling, especially when we talk about the
leg dives, the leg passes. That's you start ending up in some real funky positions that just you go straight into leg locks and that kind of stuff that was very popular in the early 2000s. For a while.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, I feel like even the, you know, like, cause you know, when I'm talking about like an amateur wrestler or a folk style wrestler, I'm talking about like my era, you know? And so I don't, you know, get me on the mat with like one of these funk wrestlers. I don't know what I would do, but it's interesting. Cause I feel like a lot of and maybe I'll just speak for myself. Like when I was on the mat, a lot of my, just wrestling was like raw movement and athleticism. I feel like with a lot of, you know, these jiu-jitsu stylists, a lot of these, you know, grapplers, like modern grapplers, they're very, very technical in terms of every position and every movement. You know, like there's a flow chart, you know, for every move, you can go here, 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 and here. You know, like Ben Askren, he's got like his whole funk game mapped out, you know, in terms of like, if I grab him, I can do the leg pass, and then I get in this like overhook on the leg position. And then from the overhook on the leg position, I can, you know, move in either direction A, B, or C, depending on what they're doing.
Right.
So yeah, I just feel like the game has definitely changed. And I'm
wondering what you start watching, like, so I still watch. I mean, really, that's the sport I still follow very dearly. And then you start, but nowadays, you see guys, it's changed back to where a good sprawl is going to crush some of that, right? And then guys start leg dive only out of desperation now, because then they realize it's not getting them anywhere. In an amateur scenario, you go for the stalemate, basically, at this point. Occasionally create that scramble scenario, but the coaches are like, hey, control the head, control the hips, nothing's changed, shut it down. You know, but yeah, no, there's like, boy, I remember when that stuff first came out and I was watching, I was like,
right?
I was like, how the fuck are they doing that shit? I've never seen some of that before. They were rolling, passing legs behind, coming out the back door in different ways than even John Smith was doing that. Just diving crazily to me back then. I was like, what the, you know, but now I've seen enough.
You get two guys on the mat who do that, and it just looks bananas. Right. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to be said about the basics too.
Right. But it's
I've always been I always improvise. And I teach people that. I try to tell them that improvise, because you just don't know. You've got to have an open mind. You got to be creative in essence. So,
Right.
but I can tell you this. I want to get on to this Ben Askren thing. So what I'm talking about now is coming from my jazz music training. Now, here's the thing. Jazz guys always improvise. That's the whole thing. You know, you will get knocked, you will get fired if you play arrangements all the time, all right? That's society music. You got to improvise. That being said, every improviser has what we call in jazz an outline, okay? You have an outline. You have what's called crutch licks. You know, when you're in trouble, you'll play these licks over and over when you're in trouble. But so my approach would be like in the Ben Askren's to compare, I have an outline. So Ben passes the leg, then he goes to the head, let's say, whatever. Okay, I have that, but that's not my goal. That's just my outline. So if I can get past the leg, get to the head. Now, once I get to the head, I got the neck, I got the face, I got the wrist locks, I got the rips. So now all of this shit opens up. So that's kind of how I've always approached things. Just always trying to be creative, always trying to improvise, because in my world, I had to deal with weapons and always dealing with punches and kicks and fights, you know, street fighting oriented stuff and landscapes, getting, you know, chairs in the way and walls. So I really had to think quickly on my feet. Or
husbands and boyfriends.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, ex-husbands. Yeah. So that's been my thing. Now, if I was raised, if MMA existed or grappling tournaments existed in my younger day, maybe I wouldn't have been this way. If I was raised in the suburbs, I probably wouldn't have thought this way. But so that's why I take things this way. And I always want my guys to learn to think on their feet, so to speak, even if you're on the mat. It's just a figure of speech. But improvise, see things, you know, start to be creative. Don't get too comfortable and get into a routine, you know, mix it up in your mind. So it's like a songwriter, you know, not every song can sound the same. You know, you've got to write totally different kind of songs, could be in the same style, but make it different. And that's how I approach fighting. That's just my way. And again, my way's not for everybody.
So like Sergeant, did you watch Penn State and Iowa, the dual meet? I'll go back to that in a little bit, talking about picking back of what we're saying, what Tony was saying.
The most recent one?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I'm maybe I did, but go ahead.
It was like last week. So traditionally, Iowa is the grind, fight, blah, 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 and then duke it out style, brawling, right? They're going to beat you into submission. Penn State, they wrestle for KO. These guys are smooth, slick, and then they pull stuff out of like nowhere sometimes, right? They all wrestle kind of like KO Sanderson a little bit, do stuff that no one can do. But I keep reading these articles and seeing these videos where all the Penn State kids talk about when they're in the practice room. That's one big part of it, where it's like they try to not just wrestle through positions, but look for the pin, look for points in every position, not just the traditional ones, right? So they like encourage that a lot. So that's when you see when they wrestle, it's like, oh, fuck, how did he fucking did that? How did he do that? Right? Normally you got to do this, do that, and then get there. And then they're just like, boom, reverse you right to your back. You see that way more. But then I find the interesting thing is that works for KO and blah, blah. And then when they wrestle certain kids, that works all the time. When they wrestle Iowa, Penn State won, by the way. And then it still is down to everybody shutting everybody down to a grind. Doesn't matter what you want to do. The brawler couldn't brawl. The slick people that were trying to create their opportunities couldn't do it. It just all came down to physicality and will at that point. But I just, I've been dying to talk to somebody else about that match for a while. So that dual meet. Me and all my buddies, every Friday night.
I want to check it out now.
When Big Ten goes on,
you make like a boring decision grind sound exciting. You're like,
Yeah, but there's just
you
so
could
much
just see
action.
them neutralizing each other at every turn. No one could get their game going, and then it just became a battle of wills.
It was crazy. Like, you know, and I'm an Iowa fan forever and ever, especially in college wrestling, even when I was wrestling in college, because I'm a Dan Gable fan. I honestly, this was the first time I was like going down the lineup. I go, they could get shut out. If they're not careful, they could lose every single match against Penn State. Thank God they didn't.
Yeah,
that's all I'm gonna say.
That's the thing about, you know, you got it down to the grind. You know, they were able to impose wills and, you know, kind of like just shut things down. Sometimes that's what you have to do in a fight, man. You know, you got to cut this guy's angle. You know, don't let him get around you or just whatever. Just shut it down. I got to admit, I don't get to watch MMA as much at all. I just once in a blue moon will see a clip, you know, of something. But you know, I hear enough from other guys. You know, I kind of can piece it together. But yeah, you guys all got me thinking back now about to the late 90s when we all met, like right around the year 2000 when some of it was still in its infancy. Yeah, those were happy times. Too bad you never got to see the old the other gym that I had. Well, Triton College, I don't think you were ever there, but the gym that I had in Bensonville was not much nicer. You know, we could get, you know, more, you know, different type of energy.
That one with the couches and the pool table, like really, like that much nicer. Yeah, couches and pool table.
I had my Brunswick 9-foot pool table there. Yeah, oh yeah. Weights,
got a tanning bed.
Tony had a tanning bed.
Yeah, a sauna, a hot tub, a bar, a poker table. Oh yeah, it was a social athletic club. That's what we called it. It was cool. But yeah, I miss that. But you know, we're all older now, families and injuries and life, and you know, but boy, it's sure good to see you, man. I hope I get to see you in person, man.
Yeah, I mean, I have lots of plans for a post-pandemic life, so let's make it happen.
Yeah, Chicago's not that far. Of course, I'm in the suburbs or the rural, but that's no biggie. But
where are you now? In Minneapolis?
Yeah, I'm in Minneapolis.
All right, nice. Okay.
And then, Bruce, where are you at these days?
Right. I mean, I'm in 3 places. Right now I'm in Seattle. But I come here to visit my parents. I live in between San Jose and Chicago. Still back and forth a little bit, but I'm probably going to be moving back to Chicago for good.
Can't wait.
But I'm
back in Illinois.
I might be going to Minneapolis in March, but if not, definitely soon. So next time I'm there, I'm going to look you up. Buy you a drink.
We'll share some contact information for sure.
Bring you some diapers.
Yeah, you got to tell Eric Paulson that I said hello to, because one guy that I used to train, he also trains under Eric Paulson, and he was always talking about Eric and I doing like a joint seminar here in Chicago, and it's just never happened. And of course now with the COVID thing, who knows if it'll ever happen. But this guy used to train under Larry Hartzell, and I got to meet Larry Hartzell a couple of times, and man, that was a very nice guy. Now, him and I would have been best buddies. Larry wanted me to do an E-bar video for him. And before I could get it filmed, sadly, he passed away. But because I knew him right near I just met him at the tail end of his life, you know. And we had some nice talks. We probably would have had much more. He was very candid and kind of confirmed some of the beliefs that I had. He confirmed them, which I will not go into publicly. But believe me, he was a really nice guy, and just a guy that I wish I could have gotten to know earlier. And I wish he was still alive today. Believe me, him and I would have been in touch all the time. He's just a nice guy. He was a very nice guy. And I've talked to Josh Barnett. I've talked to Eric Paulson. They've always seemed very nice. I saw Josh Barnett on one of the hot rod shows, car shows a few years ago. I was jealous. I wish I could have been on the show. So I didn't know that Josh was into, classic cars. So if I get to see him, that's something that we can talk about as well, besides just the wrestling stuff. But yeah, they're still going. Now I would think Eric is either my age or maybe older, a couple of years. I don't know. He's from Minneapolis, I think, right? Or St. Paul?
Paulson is out on the West Coast. He's in LA, I believe.
But no, isn't he originally from Minneapolis, I'm saying?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's originally
I'm not sure.
Minnesota native. That's right. That's correct.
Well, how old is he? He's got to be around my age, or maybe a little older, right? Or younger.
I remember seeing him in the Black Belt magazine, like, what, 1948, 49?
Well, being out on the West Coast is a big help, because when in his age, because, that's where it was all happening. In the 70s, it was all New York, but then it all transitioned over there. And, and I think he used to train with, Inoue and probably Gene LaBelle. And, he had all those connections. I'm thinking, right? Or no?
You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
So, question for Sa Jin, if you don't mind. You got a couple boys, next generation of wrestlers, or what are you thinking for these little ones?
I'm as far as my kids are concerned, I want my son to box and wrestle. Just, I think it's unfortunate
and
reality.
How old are they? Just clarify. How old are your kids now?
Son is 5, daughter is 2.
Okay.
He's eventually gonna box and wrestle. So yeah, the diapers, Bruce, I don't need them. We got the student potty trained, so we're good. We're good. But I feel like as I was mentioning, it's just kind of an unfortunate reality that, like, Asian American men, they get bullied. And for me, like, wrestling was something that I gravitated to in order to kind of develop myself physically, to learn how to protect myself, and perhaps to kind of fight back against some stereotypes about Asian men and like what we can do or what we're capable of. So yeah, for my son, I want him to do those two things for his own safety and protection. So that'll be mandatory for him. But I think fortunately, I've lived a life where I've gotten like, I've lived a very full life before I had kids. I don't have like all these sort of unfulfilled wishes that I'm going to project on my kids. And so, yeah, like if that's something he wants to pursue, then like, fantastic. That's something I can give to him. And if it's something that like, he doesn't want to pursue, then that's fine too. Bruce was talking about how, elite level athletes often are, just a little bit off. I think the most famous, of course, is Dan Gable, who was sort of haunted by the murder of his sister, the rape and murder of his sister. I think for me, I had like a lot of my own issues tied into, my training, and just like the need for a physical outlet, and a lot of angst and trouble in my own personal history. And so hopefully my son can have a happier life than that, and won't need to like, train like a madman in order to find some kind of solace in his life. For my daughter, I'd like her to, to learn, wrestling and boxing as well, for those same reasons. But I don't have any aspirations for them in terms of what they achieve in those sports. Whatever they want to do, I'll be happy. And what about you, Brian? I know you've got 2 little ones.
Yeah, I've got my 8-year-old daughter. She's sweetheart. I don't expect her to be much of a grappler, just on personality. My son's 4. He'll be 5 in the spring or the fall. And Askren's, one of his gyms, is 15 minutes from my house. So I've already kind of eyeballed that for maybe they start at 5 years old. I think it's called Little Ninjas or something is their first program. So he's a physical little guy, and I'm sure he'll take to it. So it's same thing though. I'm not gonna, project any kind of goals that I set for them. They'll determine that on their own, but certainly encourage it and try to impart what I can and what I know on them too.
And I want Joe Cardinal, when Joe Cardinal grows up, I want him to learn how to box a little bit and maybe wrestle, but we'll see. you know, he's probably going to be a little bit more on the lines of like, you know, you and Brian's daughter. So he might get into something like that, maybe baking, you know, cookies, or, you know, making ribbons for hair, you know, shit like that. Who knows? It's up to you, Joe.
That little ninjas program sounds pretty cool, actually.
You would probably be the dominant force there. I mean, it might be a good idea to sandbag the class. So
finally a grappling class where I might be able to dominate.
Sajin, every podcast has a you know, a little bit of love against Joe, so to speak. So I had to get that in before that. We had the 3-hour conversation. I'm surprised it took us this long. So yeah.
Joe's
hey gentlemen,
the star of the show.
I have to apologize for you know, showing up late. You know, I got my message from Joe a little bit later than I expected, and just you know how it goes. I'm a teacher, and you know, we're in a pandemic. We're in actually the middle of 2 pandemics. You know, at my school, we're in the middle of the you know, COVID pandemic, and we're also dealing with an opioid epidemic as well at the same time. And so
oh shit.
Yeah, so things have been kind of crazy. But nonetheless, it's just great to be able to take a break from all that stuff and see some like familiar faces, some friendly faces. So you know, I want to thank all of you for having me on here. Yeah, I apologize about pulling the plug now, but you know, I have to what is it? Vasil Lomachenko says tomorrow's workout begins today, and so I'm gonna start my workout tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. But you know, I gotta get to bed today in order to make that happen.
Well, we'll make you. We'll invite you back on again. We'd love to have you if you'd like to.
Oh, absolutely. It's been a pleasure, and yeah, definitely. I feel like what has it been? It's been about 2 hours for me. You know, is just definitely not been enough. You know, we've just scraped the surface. So if you'll have me on again, it would be an honor.
Well, it would be, and anybody who's in that area where he lives, I don't know if you're teaching privately, but always search out Sa Jin Kwok, because he is one of the finest fighters, not just grapplers that, you know, that I've run across. So I can't endorse him highly enough.
A wrestler, a grappler, a fighter, a father, a husband, and a gentleman, possibly a scholar even. Definitely a martial arts scholar. Oh, and a martial artist. Like all of these things.
All of you make me blush.
No, but seriously, you get all these titles because that's who you are at the end of the day, right? You do all those things you've done. So
I read Sajin's graduate dissertation, so he's definitely a scholar.
There you go.
For sure.
So listen, I do have your email. Remember, we actually exchanged email not too long ago. I got it from Brian. I texted you.
That's right.
I got it from Brian, and I hit you up. And then one of the reasons I hopped on, I know you got to go, but just Brian texted me the other day. He's like, hey, did you read that email yet? Did you see who else got copied in? I was like, no, I haven't. And then he's like, well, go read it. And then I took a peek, and I was like, okay, I'll be on.
Well, get me in the loop, too, with this, so I can be in touch with him.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
all
I'm
right,
going to come and see you.
Sergeant, good to see you again.
Great to see you, and thank you again. Let's stay in touch. Looking forward to actually making this connection in person too.
Will do, guaranteed.
All right.
Okay, take care.
Great seeing you. Take care.